In this video, I want us to try and build this animation using 6 different state-of-the-art models. You can find this animation on Lottie files. So we want to try and build the animation using Gemini 2.5 Pro, Claude Sonnet 4, Claude Opus 4, OpenAI's O3 and O4 mini models, and Grok 3. To be able to build the animation, what we need to do is to deconstruct the animation and use a prompt to explain it in plain English to the LLMs. So I have already created a prompt. Let's bring that and see what is going on in the animation. For each model, we are going to use the same prompt. So let's break the animation into pieces and see what is happening. First, we consider the sparkle animation. That is this one. You have noticed it is spinning in clockwise direction and it is a repeating animation. So we want to create a repeating spinning animation in a clockwise direction using easeInOut, because as you have noticed, as the sparkle rotates, it stops and rotates again continuously. In order to create that effect, we can use a timing curve that has acceleration and deceleration. So using easeInOut is a great option. To learn more about easings, you can visit easings.net. Over here, any of these can work as well. In that case, we need to specify a custom timing curve to be able to use it in SwiftUI. So the one I specified in the prompt is a standard easing for SwiftUI animations. But you can come here and then you select any one of these. You can add a timing curve and copy these values for the timing curve in order to use it in SwiftUI. But that is not the purpose of this video. We can also specify the easing as linear. In that case, it will rotate continuously at a constant speed. So let's leave it as easeInOut. Next, we consider how the circle animates. For that, we want a repeating spinning animation also in a clockwise direction using the same easing function. Aside from the circle rotating continuously in the clockwise direction, there is also another animation. So we want to animate the stroke start. Whenever you draw a complete stroke circle, it has a stroke start and also a stroke end. The stroke start is where the circle starts to draw from, and the stroke end is where it ends. So in SwiftUI, we can use the trim modifier to draw and erase the stroke. The trim modifier also has two properties, from and to. For a complete circle, the from value is 0.5 and the to value is 1.0. So I specified these values by guessing. So as the circle is rotating, we want to animate the stroke start this way and also animate the stroke end this way. Lastly, we have the music symbol. The music symbol also has two animations. So for this one, we want a repeating animation using the Y offset by animating it from 0 to -10. For each of the examples, we are going to build the animation for iOS. So if you specify it as -10, it will move upward. Also, we want to scale the Y coordinate from 1.0 to 0.8. As the music icon moves up and down, you have noticed it also scales as well. By using only the Y coordinate, after describing the animation this way, I will copy the prompt and use it for each of the models. I have already created an Xcode project for this. In the Xcode project, I have created a starter file for each of the models. So all the files are the same. I have the same content in each one of them. So let's begin from this one, Claude Opus 4 loading animation. Before we do that, I want to show you how I assembled the views. Everything is contained in this Z stack behind all the other views. In front of the music icon, we have another Z stack with the alignment set to top trailing. That pushes the sparkle to the top trailing section of the music icon. If I, for example, remove the alignment, you have noticed it has moved to the center of the screen. Let's undo the change. And within the Z stack, we have the circle and the sparkle. We can access the Claude Opus 4 model from the Anthropic website. However, we are going to use Cursor. So over here, you have noticed I have selected the same file in the Xcode project. Also, I have selected Claude Opus 4 as the model. In Cursor, only the max is available for Claude Opus 4. So over here, let's paste the prompt and send it. So it is going to modify this file. I will then accept the change and then wait for a moment. It is summarizing everything I did. You have noticed the Claude Opus 4 model followed the instructions we gave because I stated in the prompt to use SwiftUI's PhaseAnimator. and that is exactly what it did for each of the animations. Let's go back to Xcode and test the animation. You have noticed the animation is quite similar. However, there are some other details we didn't specify in the prompt. So once you get the animation this way, you can go ahead and modify any of the individual animations. For example, changing the rotation values and the easing equation as well. If I go back to the original animation, you have noticed the music icon scales from the top. In the prompt, I should have specified, if we consider the one we generated with Claude Opus 4, the music icon is scaling from the center. Let's locate the music icon. To make it scale from the top instead, we pass another parameter in scale effect. So over here, I'll put a comma and add anchor. That is the anchor point. If you don't specify the anchor, by default, it is set to the center. However, if I put a period here, we have different options, like the top. We can set it to the bottom trailing, or the top trailing. You have now noticed the music icon is scaling from the top instead of the center. In the original animation also, it seems to be moving up and down, but in the one we generated, it doesn't move up and down, although it is scaling up and down. To move it, let's change the value here to, for example, -20. You have now noticed it is moving. If we increase the value, that makes it move more. So we can modify the animation in different ways. Next, these values are also too close. So I can change this to, for example, 0.4 or even 0.1. That makes it mimic the original animation. Let's go to our second model, Claude Sonnet 4. So I'll go back to Cursor. First, I will clear the chart and change the model from Claude Opus 4 and select Sonnet. For Sonnet also, we can leave it as max. However, that is not really needed. So let's turn it off and select the corresponding file. Then I'll add the same prompt and send it as well. So I will go ahead and accept the changes. You have noticed the Sonnet animation is also similar to the one of Opus. Let's go to Xcode and test it. With this animation, instead of the rotation moving in the clockwise direction, you have noticed the circle and the sparkle rotates back and forth in both clockwise and anti-clockwise directions. However, the music notation animation is perfect. We can go to the individual views and modify the animation to happen in the same direction. So far, I like the animation generated by both models because modifying the animation by hand to mimic the original animation is quite simple. So for this animation, we will not do any modification. I'll move to the third model, Gemini 2.5 Pro. For this example, we are still going to use Cursor. I'll select the corresponding file and clear the chart. Then I'll change the model to Gemini 2.5 Pro and paste the prompt. Then I'll send it. Like the previous examples, I will accept the changes and test it in Xcode. You have noticed with the Gemini 2.5 Pro example, we have 3 errors. Most of the time that happens whenever I generate SwiftUI code using Gemini 2.5 Pro. This error is quite obvious because the PhaseAnimator view doesn't have anything like this. First, you put the content you want to animate here. Then you can customize the animation using the animation trailing closure. So it went ahead to add this, which doesn't need to be there. So I will copy each of the errors and try to fix it. So let's see if it will be able to fix the errors. Otherwise, we will leave it that way and move on to the next model. So it has completed modifying the file. Let's accept the changes and go back to Xcode and test it again. We cannot add a trim modifier to content this way. Even if you add it to a shape, it has to be the first modifier for the shape. And as you have noticed here, the rotation effect modifier has been the first. So let's try to fix it again. It has modified that again, so I'll accept the changes and test it. As I said previously, the trim modifier has to be the first modifier when you use it on shapes. However, we cannot use it on content this way. I will move on to the next by selecting Grok tray. For this example, I'll go to the browser again. Then I'll copy the prompt and use it for Grok tray. Also, let's add the code as well and select think. Then I'll send a prompt and wait for some time until everything is generated. For all the examples, you have noticed this has taken the longest time, more than 1 minute. However, if the result works, that doesn't matter a lot. Now we have the modified code. So let's copy and replace the one in Xcode. The Grok 3 example is also having 2 errors. Let's copy each of the errors and go back to see if we can fix it. So it is generating a new version of the animation. Let's copy the corrected code and try again in Xcode. So the error has disappeared. So let's see if the animation works or not. So you have noticed the Grok 3 animation also works, not as well as the Claude 4 examples. However, we can modify each of the animation parameters to mimic the original animation. So let's go to the fifth example, that is the fifth model, OpenAI O3. For this example, we also want to use ChatGPT chat bar. So let's copy the prompt. I will bring the chat bar with option and space. Then I'll change the model from 4.0 to O3 and paste the prompt here and send it. So O3 is also having similar errors as the Gemini example. So let's try to fix the errors by copying each one of them. So it is going to modify the code again and apply the changes automatically. You have noticed O3 has also been able to create the animation similar to the previous examples. So we can make changes in the animation parameters to mimic the original one. Let's go to the final model, that is O4 mini. I will bring the chat bar again. With O4 mini, I'm going to paste the same prompt. Then I'll change the model to O4 mini and send it. I'm hoping that will be similar to the O3 version. So you have noticed that is very similar to the O3 version. However, with the O3 version, we had an error in the beginning. So that is all we have in this video. I showed you how to generate the same animation using 6 different models.